And we stand before you today with a heavy heart. As a father, as a husband, words don't do justice to the loss that we've seen in our community. Our community is grieving a loss that's happened yet again. Today we remember Savannah Kula, a devoted mother, daughter, and friend. Her life was taken in an act of domestic violence that has left 4 children without a mother. One of those children, her 1-year-old daughter, was present during the incident. Horrifying. This tragedy should shake us all. It's certainly shaken our community. Sadly, it was predictable and preventable, and exposes the deadly consequences of a bail system that continues to fail victims of violence. Let's be clear about what we know. The accused, Anthony DeShepper, was previously in a relationship with Savannah. They had been separated for several months and shared a 1-year-old daughter who was present at the time of the incident. The accused was also facing firearms-related charges from September 2023, involving Savannah Kula as the victim after he discharged a gun in the air and fled the scene. He was later located in the Waterloo region and taken into custody. Despite a long history of violence, prior weapons prohibitions, and multiple convictions, he was released on bail under a nighttime curfew. 2 years later, Savannah Kula is dead, the result of an utterly foreseeable chain of failures. Our system has failed Savannah Kula. This is a disturbing pattern, not an isolated incident. In 2020, we had a press conference here about the loss of another young woman, Darian Haley Henderson Bellman, also in a domestic violence shooting in Brampton. Her killer, Sheldon Francis, was out on bail despite facing serious weapons charges and being under multiple court orders prohibiting firearm possessions. In this case, he was actually released 5 times, despite the objections of the Crown. At that time in 2020, we said never again. Never again should the system be broken to such an effect that we have these preventable deaths. The system that allowed these tragedies to happen is too lenient, too slow, too focused on procedural fairness for offenders rather than the protections of the victim. When someone has a documented history of violence, firearm offenses, and intimate partner abuse, releasing them on bail is not justice, it's absolute negligence. As I've said before, on too many occasions, the current state of bail in Canada is unacceptable and absolutely needs to change. As Mayor of Brampton and as a member of the Peel Police Services Board, I have joined our chief, our Police Services Board, to plea over the last 5 years for urgent bail reform. Brampton, I believe, was one of the first cities in the country to begin a petition lobbying for bail reform to protect communities like ours from exactly this kind of tragedy. We have urged for reverse onus bail for repeat violent offenders, especially those with firearms or intimate partner violence histories. No release for anyone already on bail for similar violation of weapons-related offenses. Strict enforcement of weapons prohibitions with zero tolerance for breaches. Stronger victim protections and supports so survivors are not left unprotected while offenders walk free. We cannot continue to accept tragedies like Savannah Kula's or Darian Haley Henderson Bellman's as inevitable. This is not a question of partisanship or ideology, it's a question of public safety. Our communities, our victims, our families deserve better. But to the family of Savannah Kula, our hearts are with you. Brampton grieves with you. To her children, you are not alone. To every survivor of domestic violence, we see you and we will fight for a justice system that protects you. And to lawmakers at every level, this must be the last time we stand at a podium mourning the death that our justice system could have prevented. We owe that to Savannah Kula. We owed it to Darian Henderson Bellman. We owe it to every woman and family in this country who deserves to be safe in their home and in their community.
Nitin Chopra from India Today and #Media Group. Mayor, these are not the two only incidents for last so many years, and you were the biggest advocate for asking the bail reform. And you, in your statement, said the criminal negligence. This is criminal negligence. And Superintendent said that for some time we are doing the advocacy. It's not some time, it's I think 7-8 years for we are doing this. We are asking these same things. Media is reporting that. Who should be the accountable? Provincial government lawmakers, federal government lawmakers, because someone has to give answer to all those innocent lives lost, either on a Highway 401 crash where the innocent families, they died, or this incidents or many before. Someone should be accountable. Somewhere, someone should take the responsibility. Which level of government is that? And if you were the Prime Minister or the Premier, you would also have taken 7-8 years to bring the bail reforms. How could you have changed this differently? Because Canadians are sick and tired. Are you not sick and tired, Mayor?
I think we're all sick and tired and horrified. I think every level of government owns responsibility, and I don't think finger pointing between governments helps. We just need to solve this. In terms of adequate resources for the police to respond to every call of domestic violence, that's on us locally. It's why we had the largest increase in Peel police funding in our history, 300 new officers. And when I spoke at that budget debate, I said I don't want to see a 911 call that cannot be responded to when someone is dealing with the crisis of domestic violence. The provincial government has to adequately fund our correctional system and our courthouse, and it is at capacity right now, particularly in Peel Region, particularly in Brampton. And the federal government is responsible for the criminal code, so bail reform is their responsibility. The Youth Criminal Justice Act is their responsibility. And the reason I think we're pretty shaken today is that Savannah Kula's tragedy is just eerily similar to the case of Darian Henderson Bellman that really sparked our campaign in 2020 where we started the petition. It's just the details of these tragedies, how preventable it was, how the system absolutely failed, utterly failed their families. The fact that, in the same community, this can happen again. When we said never again, it's tough to take. Legislation that was introduced today by Justice Minister Sean Fraser is certainly, we have a level of optimism around this. The reverse onuses that we've been calling for firearm offenses, for domestic violence are in this legislation. I would note, we've also spoken extensively about organized crime and car thefts and extortions. Those new provisions are in the legislation that was introduced today. And so we need to see all the details. And I know the Peel Police will look at this legislation and see if it meets what we were asking for. But at first glance, it is very encouraging. But it should have happened 5 years ago. And Savannah Kula would be alive today. And so I think that's where our frustration really comes from, is that the legislation has been introduced. We know how the House of Commons can work and how the Senate can work, and things can go there and die for years. Our message is they want this passed today. In the case of Darian Henderson Bellman, the killer was released 5 times and then took his former partner's life. In this case, all the warning signs were there. This is a person with a history of firearm offenses, with a history of domestic violence. The notion that person was released when it was apparent to everyone that they were a threat is why we call this a preventable tragedy. This person should have been in custody. And he wasn't allowed contact. How does that happen? It speaks to a broken system. There is no reason that person should not have been in custody. But I'll ask Superintendent David Kennedy to speak to this. He's been the lead on this investigation, like I said, I think we're all shaken by this, because there's no reason Savannah Kula shouldn't be alive today if the system even operated properly. There are numerous reasons that the killer should have been in custody. If one of them was adhered to, Savannah would be alive today.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I would just add to that in that, yes, we did come to learn that the suspect had a significant violent history. And yes, it was more than 2 years since the event in 2023, which he was last charged with firearms offenses. Clearly, his release posed a significant risk to Savannah and potentially others in our community. And, what I would say is the potential changes are encouraging. I think we're cautiously optimistic. And we're encouraged that our collective advocacy and our voices are being heard, both at the OACP and the CACP level, certainly through the advocacy, the ongoing advocacy of His Worship, through our Police Services Board, all of our regional councils and our federal and municipal elected officials. That voice is now being heard. I think that's the first step of that level of encouragement. Again, the timings and being able to now implement and also activate these new changes. It's going to take some time for us to understand whether they are going to have the impact that we all hope it will, and that they will actually help those who represent the most vulnerable in our community, and they provide more stringent guidelines and restrictions on those who pose the most significant amount of risk.
Or children are motherless right now. I mean, who should be held accountable for this?
So it is a terrible tragedy, and that is I can't overstate that enough. We spoke about this earlier, that 4 children are now growing up without their mothers. This was by all accounts preventable. And as His Worship Mayor Brown said, we need only look at the case of Darian Henderson Bellman to see that that was another, by all accounts, preventable offense where a significant and tragic outcome came to a young woman at the hands of somebody who had offended time and time again. And unfortunately, we are now here because another tragic circumstance happened yesterday.
And as we find it disheartening. Imagine being the officer that made the original arrest, and how disheartening it is to see that person they worked hard to apprehend then release so quickly and so needlessly. I do think the system is broken. I think the justice system is broken. And as I was saying earlier, on a federal level, it's very clear the criminal code is broken. The Youth Criminal Justice Act is broken. In terms of the courts and the correctional systems, there are resource shortages. Too often I hear about delay claims at the Brampton courthouse. Too often I hear about Maplehurst being at capacity, where everyone is being awarded credit for double or triple bunking or dead time. And so the system has failed the Darian Henderson Bellmans and the Savannah Coolas. And I think our plea is there is urgency into fixing this. Urgency for adequate resources on a provincial level. Urgency to getting this bail reform bill passed.
About the public safety, again, fireworks were banned in the city of Brampton, and we had seen for last couple of days, we heard so many fireworks happen, and city announced that there will be a $100,000 fine if any defaulters are fined. So any fine issued of $100,000, and what to do next? Because for last so many years we had seen that these things were happening, and even with the strict announcement by the city, those defaulters, they don't obey the laws, and they won't never. So what next plan the city has to tackle that issue of fireworks and all those hooliganism they are doing in the plazas and viral videos?
So the first year that fireworks were banned in Brampton, we saw about a 90% reduction in incidents. This year we got too many complaints. There's still obviously a significant change since what we saw 4 years ago. The highest fine is not the automatic fine. There is a sliding scale of fines. I would note the bylaw was out in full force. Everyone was working overtime to deal with the challenging time that is Diwali. In terms of the fireworks that are done in a dangerous manner or in the middle of the night, there was a number of fines. We're going to have a council report, but I believe it's well over $45,000 worth of fines that were issued. So those that do not follow the city bylaws, there is consequences for.
Every single time Councillor Brar and I in the morning turn on the news and perhaps see another woman tragically shot, killed, or abused, our hearts drop every single time. Because in our minds, we think to ourselves, my God, is this another case of intimate partner violence? And certainly on that morning, when I heard the news, when I got a bit of a briefing that a woman has been shot, both of us, our hearts dropped. We have been advocating for more awareness, more support, particularly for women and their children escaping intimate partner violence. We receive calls from our own constituents, women in our community who are trying so hard to leave their violent partners. And they end up in emergency shelters and in many cases lack transitional housing to put their lives together with their children. Because there's not that support, they end up going back to their abuser, who's usually a repeat offender. And then we end up with cases as described today. We appreciate the changes to the legislation that we as Brampton Council, Region Appeal Council, have been advocating for years. Sadly, for victims who are gone, so many of them, it's too late for them. And like the mayor said, this should have happened yesterday, if not years ago. And perhaps these women and the trauma that their families are now going to have to endure, especially their children, their young children, without their mother, they're going to be the ones who are going to have to suffer the very sad, unfortunate consequences that could have been avoided. So again, Councillor Brar and I, as the two women on Brampton Council, advocating so hard together with Mayor Brown and the rest of Brampton Council, support this. I think we still need to see more, and certainly, in addition to that, the support for women and the victims who've been traumatized by such events. Thank you, Mayor Brown.
We are here today because yesterday Savannah Kula was tragically shot and killed in the early afternoon in a crowded commercial area in our region. The suspect, Mr. DeShepard, then left the scene in a vehicle with his one-year-old child that he and Miss Kula shared. Frontline officers and investigative units were immediately dispatched, and once circumstances became clearer, the search for Mr. DeShepard and the child began. At this point, the concern for the safety of the young child as well as the public at large became our immediate focus. As such, later in the afternoon, we issued an Amber Alert notifying the public of what had occurred and further requesting their assistance in locating both Mr. DeShepard and the child as soon as possible. Yesterday evening, we were collectively relieved that the child was located safe and in good health. Investigators have since learned that Ms. Kula and Mr. DeShepard have been in a relationship. However, at the time that the event occurred, were estranged. We also learned that Ms. Kula is a mother to 3 additional children, in addition to the child that she shared with Mr. DeShepard. Horrifically, all of these children will now grow up without their mother. Mr. DeShepard has an extensive criminal past, as you heard from the mayor, which includes convictions for a number of violent offenses, including several convictions for robbery, assault caused bodily harm, aggravated assault, and uttering threats. As a result of these convictions, Mr. DeShepard was bound by several weapons and firearms prohibitions. At the time of the murder, Mr. DeShepard was also on bail and subject to several stringent court-opposed conditions, including a curfew, weapons and firearms prohibitions, non-contact orders, to reside in Ontario with a surety, and most notably, not to have any contact with Savannah Kula. These conditions relate to a 2023 investigation and subsequent prosecution that again involved the deceased, for which Mr. DeShepard was charged with several violent offenses, including discharged firearm, possession of a weapon for dangerous purpose, possession of a restricted firearm with ammunition, unauthorized possession of a firearm, among other charges. This is another tragic example of an individual being out on bail in possession of a firearm that he was not authorized to possess, in contravention of a court-imposed condition, in possession, demonstrating an escalated and fatal propensity of violence that has left 4 young children without their mother. Notwithstanding the outcome in Niagara region, the circumstances relating to Mr. DeShepard, our investigative team continues to meticulously investigate the circumstances of the incident in hope of attempting to prevent similar circumstances from happening in the future.